Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, college football fans across the nation and around the world. This is Tim May with the Tim May Show. And once again, we're going to jump right into it, man. Up here in the cockpit with me, my able-bodied co-pilot. You've seen him on many times. You'll see him on many times from now. Wilhelm, former Ohio State linebacker, former NFL linebacker, national championship linebacker with the 2002 Ohio State football team. Welcome back to the Tim May Show, my man.
It's great to be here, Tim, and great to be talking about another exciting Buckeye victory.
Absolutely. It's just cool. I try to stay pretty damn objective. But, man, when you see a team kind of come into its own, you know what I mean? Like, I watched you guys do this in 2002. And, like we've talked about many times when I've had you on here, just the heart attack games, the cardiac kids, whatever you want to call it, you guys were in 2002. This team, I think, this 2023 team is slowly but surely finding its way, finding its stride. And once again, they knock off a top 10 opponent, Penn State in Ohio Stadium. Ohio State stays number 3 in the country. But wanted to jump right into it with you, Matt. Really good. I've got you on this week, too. We scheduled this several weeks ago. People don't know this. This didn't just fall out of the sky luck for me. But let me just ask you straight up, is this defense getting close to, if not silver bullet worthy?
It absolutely is. And I think that, to your point, talking about, its comparison to 2002, a lot of people think, and it's, the hiring of Jim Knowles is now also in year 2, the same way that Mark D'Antonio brought in by Jim Tressel, our year 2 was that 2002 national championship team. And there's something to be said about guys maturing in the system, coaches learning about guys, putting guys in certain situations, that in the past they probably weren't ready for, that they're now ready for. I'm sure there's calls, that Jim Knowles wish he had back from last year or would have changed. And that's all through the evaluation process of having a year together under your belt. And I thought you saw that in 2002 with D'Antonio, with how good we were on a very senior-led football team. But also it takes those young guys, which we have a mixture of, and we can get into some of them. The Matthews, the corner kid, played great for us. Unexpected, but thrown in there, and didn't miss a beat. But I do, to answer your question, I do think they're on the cusp of embracing the silver bullet defense, and so much of that has to do with the inability of the opposing team to score touchdowns. Right. Yes. And the flying around and making the big hits and the big plays and the pass breakups. And I think, as we talked earlier in the season, even against some, non-worthy opponents, non-top 10 opponents, I was asking to see more.
Yeah. Go ahead.
There you go. Exactly. Right. I think I saw more playmaking ability from our front 4 or front 5. When we bring 5. I was extremely critical of, I'll say, Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau, if that's how you say it.
Tuimoloau, but that's close enough. Just don't call him late for pass rush. Yeah,
exactly. But you saw the impact that when those guys are playing their best, and I hope they continue playing with a chip on their shoulder, because they're playing for a lot now currently on the Ohio State defense. But for both of those guys, if they happen to leave, they're playing for the draft. They're putting out good film for the NFL draft, being, draft eligible this year. But I thought one other last thing that I'll talk about before we get into, your next topic is our defense seems to be making plays when we need them, if that makes sense.
It makes total sense.
All good defenses, whether it's a turnover, whether it's the pass breakup, whether it's the sack force fumble, whether it's the sack or the stopped run, whatever it happened to be, they step up and make it when they're in that position. And I think for the longest time, there was a lot of inconsistency about, even against that team up north, it was like, oh, it's 3rd and 3 and they go get 4 to continue the drive that ends up in a touchdown. But had we stopped them and forced a punt and we give that football back to CJ Stroud, you don't know what could happen. And I think the defenses that we're alluding to, that we, give the moniker silver bullet defenses, all did that. And I think they're on the cusp of showing it. They showed it, very well. I thought they made a 5-star quarterback who's in year 2 in his system, and Drew Aller, kid from up this way in Medina, looked rudimentary from the level of football that he was playing at, and that has to do with Knowles' ability to rush 4, drop 7, and give him unique looks, force him to throw the football down the field, which I think we saw, we heard Joel Klatt say throughout the broadcast a lot. And then I think it's all going to also come down to is taking away the run and forcing the team on the other side to have to throw the football, where I think it plays into our hands a little bit at this point with where our defense is at.
Yeah. All of that is true. I mean, but it always starts just like with you guys in 2002, man. That front four was, and the way you guys were able to apply pressure at certain points in games and stuff with Will Smith and all those guys, Darian Scott, all those guys.
Gosh, Simon Frazier.
Oh, Simon Frazier. Yeah.
Yeah. All the guys were. Yep.
It just changes the way the other team has to play. It makes a regularly cool quarterback a little frantic, and then on top of that, I think looking back now, I think you have to agree, most people agree, Penn State is not replete with superstar guys at wide receiver, and Ohio State exposed that also. Guys were not getting open, and that was a part about that Penn State team that got all this talk going into the game about maybe this is James Franklin's best team. I don't agree with that. I think it could be, but it was lacking in some areas. But the other talk that was going on was how there were several people nationally talking about how average, if below average, Ohio State secondary was and how it was playing. I'm going, wait a minute, what games are you guys watching? Or did you read one of your buddies write that? Did you read what he wrote and you decided to write the same thing or say the same thing?
Sure.
Because you're not paying attention. Josh Proctor is playing on another level. He's playing on that level I always anticipated he would play on 5 years ago when he showed up at Ohio State. And like you just said, Jermaine Matthews gets his first start, freshman at corner in place of Denzel Burke, who didn't get to play. Maybe Ohio State's best, defensive player, but definitely best back end player. And
what
played well.
What I also loved seeing was, and it's a maturity and a progress as the season goes on. But Davison Igbinosun, when he's been targeted, it's been an easy pass interference penalty, which is an automatic first down for a lot of offenses. So Penn State couldn't take advantage of that. It's a couple of things. It's Igbinosun, playing with better technique, playing in better phase. It's maybe the lack of skill or the lack of of high end talent at Penn State, so that it was a little bit more of a cakewalk for us. I think it's also a combination of Jim Knowles putting him in better situations. But all in all, here's the thing: we're climbing a mountain to play against that team up north, right? And we have no blemishes in the loss column, and neither do they. Rightfully so. But we've overcome two of our biggest preseason notches on the belt, which was going up to Notre Dame and hosting these guys, which was, as to your point, and I heard the narrative too all offseason about Penn State, about how, James Franklin, this deep into a system, and it's like finally got the quarterback, instead of like the run first quarterback that can also throw, it's you got a kid that can sling the rock, which is, kind of like James Franklin's, MO, coming out of Vandy. And the big, I thought, Tumioloau, balling against what a lot of people think is a top 20 tackle in the NFL draft.
Yeah.
And so and walking him back to the quarterback and having Aller try to deliver the football, in a press box, like all under pressure. It's just, and you can do it with 4. And when you can do it with 4, as long as the guys on the back end have great vision and they understand, right, read routes and they're coached extremely well and they execute, we could see how uncomfortable it made a quarterback.
Yeah, there was a little play, another play that it's funny that Tuimoloau got credit for 1 tackle in that game, and it was a sack. But when you think about how disruptive he was in that game, it was crazy. But I want this is Jim Knowles and Tim Walton, Perry Eliano. They're all involved. Larry Johnson. They're all involved in scheming this stuff up. James Laurinaitis also. But there was one play in particular where Penn State put a tight end over on the Tuimoloau side on one play. This is a play that Tuimoloau made, and on Fashionau's side, the offensive tackle you're talking about, but Jim Knowles, or they had Igbinosun step up and go face to face with Fashanu. You understand what I'm saying? Meaning that there was no, if they put the tight end over there to help block Tuimoloau, suddenly Fashanu had a guy in his face. Tuimoloau stepped out a little bit farther and had a pass rush against their tight end, which he won decisively. Yeah, I mean, that's little bitty games being played within the game.
In-game recognition by the coaches to put the players, elite players in a position to make a play or to play to their strengths.
Yeah.
And what you do in that situation is you just force a guy who's a great pass rusher to pass rush.
Yeah.
Don't think about getting chipped. Am I going to get chipped? And then the tackle's going to fan to me. It's you make the little small tweaks, the little X's and that's the one thing that I can also say. Again, you would expect elite coaching, from a school like Ohio State. But the one thing that I can say, even going back to my time, whether we won the game or lost the game, if for whatever reason a plan that you go into a game, either offensively or defensively, is not being executed, and also like maybe they're executing their plan a little bit better than we are. I always thought when you go into halftime, the ability of the players at Ohio State intellectually to soak up what's happening to them, to convey it to their words to the coaches identify it, and then you change small little tweaks, small little Ryan Day tweaks, Urban tweaks, Tressel tweaks. On my side, it was a small little D'Antonio tweak or a Knowles tweak. That is all or Kerry Combs tweak. That is all the difference between why did we look like this in the first half, and how can we look so, like even the Maryland game, how can you look so good in the second half? And it's just those little tweaks, because when you're Ohio State, when you're Bama, when you're Georgia, when you're Michigan, you're going to get everybody's best shot. Yeah. They're gonna empty the bag, to create those first downs. We even saw, the reverse pass in the red zone or something. But I mean, desperation. You force them to the brink for James Franklin to dig that deep into the bag into a game that never felt like they were in control of.
Yeah, they ran one reverse pass, and basically the kid had to eat it and got knocked out of bounds. And then on the 2-point conversion, they tried the similar play, and Ohio State was all over it. You're exactly right. Hey, let me just break in here a little bit and just do a little commercial break is what I call it. But folks looking for tickets, man, at the last minute, boy, last week was a hot ticket. This week, Ohio State at Wisconsin could be a hot ticket, because I know probably a lot of Ohio State fans are going to try to get there. It is a drivable game, as I call it, and suddenly it looms even larger on the Ohio State schedule, because Wisconsin had that great come from behind win last week. But and of course they're coached by the great Luke Fickell. But GameTime.co, the Game Time app, man, that's the place to go for your last minute tickets. And they've got Ohio State tickets all the way through the season coming up. I mean, right on down the line. I mean, I use the Game Time app whenever I need something, whether it's an Ohio State ticket, a Columbus Blue Jacket ticket, whatever it is, a concert ticket. The Game Time app is the place to go. And if you download the Game Time app and you use it, your first purchase, ladies and gentlemen, if you use the code word Buckeyes, you're going to get $20 off that first purchase. That's a hell of a deal, no matter where you're looking. Of course, terms do apply with any kind of like a guarantee and or a special offer. But the Game Time app, the GameTime.co, not .com, GameTime.co on the internet are the places to go to peruse for your last minute tickets, whether they be concerts, football games, heck, Major League Baseball games, right on down the line. Game Time app, the GameTime.co are the places to go. And remember, you use Buckeyes in the promo code Buckeyes. If you download the Game Time app and use Buckeyes in the promo code, you get $20 off your first purchase. Hey, maybe save that until the Michigan game. Who knows, right? But the Game Time app, GameTime.co, is increasingly becoming the place to go for those last minute ticket deals. And Matt Wilhelm, there were a lot of last minute ticket deals going on in 2002 when you guys were making your run. It was crazy. And just when you thought the drama was over, it increased, right? You have the great game at Purdue, and then you come back and y'all end up having to win your first overtime game at Illinois. And then, of course, you knock off Michigan, with Michigan throwing to the end zone on basically the last play that mattered, Will Allen making the interception. But my point is, this team seems to be getting increasingly better. That was my original premise when we started talking here a minute ago, this 2023 team. But right now, coming out of that win over Penn State, beating a top 10 opponent, what are your concerns about this Ohio State football team?
I do have some. And I think here's the way that I think about, because of the result of the rivalry the last 2 years, I kind of reverse engineer. Okay, we know what Michigan is, we know what they represent, and we have to go there backwards. And I think we have to keep taking steps. I think for me, and I thought about this on my drive to the office to be able to kind of set up for this time with you today, is the one thing I think our offense is missing is, I think, the consistency in the run game. That's extremely apparent. And I know a lot of that is predicated around the offensive line, but I also believe a healthy Travion Henderson is a game changer for this offense. And here's the reason why I say that is, for Mayan Williams to pop off for 25 to 30 yards because of who he is as a player, things have got to be blocked up darn near perfect to get him into space, or to get him right downhill where you double team up to a backer, and then Mayan's right behind that double team, and he pops to get him on a safety. He either runs through the safety or runs around the safety. Travion, and we've seen it throughout his entire career since his freshman year, that Travion needs a crease. It does not take a perfectly blocked up play for Travion to go for 25 or 50 or 75. It just, because of his speed, because of his vision, that him in space with any player, a linebacker, a safety, a corner, I feel really good about our chances in the run game with Travion in space versus anybody in the country. Not so much, I would say, against Chip Trainum, the McAllister kid, or Mayan. They're just different, and I think our offense functions differently with Travion in the game. And I know that Travion can go for 3 yards in a cloud of dust, when it's tough sledding for him too. But you give him the ball one time and he'll go for 75. And I can't say the same for the other three guys, not necessarily. So I think we're missing Travion Henderson. And I think that the one other word that I would say at times about our offense is, our offense kind of looks clunky. It can run really smooth, but then we can, we backfire, or, a holding call puts us behind the sticks. I also think, lastly, coming out of this football game and from this point forward, everybody's already going to know, and should know who and what Marvin Harrison, represents within our offense. I think we're a little bit Marvin dependent now. And I think it's props to Brian Hartline and Ryan Day and the offensive staff to scheme him open, especially on those crossing routes, to know exactly what Penn State was going to be in and have him run those routes to, move the sticks or score the touchdown the way we did. But yeah, I think we're also missing Emeka Egbuka. And I think we need not only one other guy to emerge, to really maximize this offense with all this skill. It's Emeka Egbuka getting healthy. I think it's the consistency from Julian Fleming or Carnell Tate, the Enos kid. Someone else needs to step up, and I think we're getting that through Cade Stover. Yeah, but eventually you're going to see better defenses that are going to be able to manage Cade and his skill set. And I also think that Cade will be minimized by our inability to run the football, because it's going to be straight drop back. And I think we're going to get crafty with Cade, but eventually Cade's not going to run by good safeties and good linebackers later in the season. I say that.
Let me interrupt you.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, Cade had a pretty decent game against Notre Dame, and then he had a really good game, in the passing game, I believe, with some key moments against Penn State. And I'm just interrupting you only because there's only one other defense. Penn State had the quote #1 defense in the country, end quote, going into that game. Yeah. They have some really good performers on the defensive line, linebacker and the secondary. Right now on Ohio State's schedule, there's only one other team that is comparable to, I think, their defense, and it is Michigan. And, my famous line is, nobody covers the tight end, at least on a consistent basis. Although Ohio State did a damn good job of it Saturday, took away their tight ends, which was key. Josh Proctor especially jumped in there with some key coverage on those things. But my point is, like you just pointed out, if they get Emeka Egbuka back, then I'm under the impression that he's got a high ankle sprain. I don't know if you ever had one of those. but they're
Have
not.
not, but I know it's worse than a break.
Oh yeah,
in most cases.
yeah, because you can tweak it at any moment. You saw what happened to the Duke quarterback against Florida State on Saturday night. Same thing. He tweaked it again, after getting it hurt against Notre Dame. But my point is, I have no problems with them leaning on Marvin Harrison Jr. It's likely his last year at Ohio State. If he was a great running back, they'd be leaning on him, right? And they were bound and determined to take Marvin Harrison Jr. away on Saturday, and in the key moments they could not do it. Go ahead.
Sure, no, and I completely understand that. My biggest issue, and I'm just looking down the road. And again, when I say look down the road, I'm not looking at Wisconsin and Rutgers and Minnesota and Michigan State.
Yeah, I'm with you.
My eyes completely go to the number 2 team in the country, that team up north, and then potentially, if we handle business that day, it's the college football playoff. What that would look like against Florida State, Oklahoma, or Georgia, or that team up north. That's where my eyes go, because I'm just saying I don't believe it's sustainable. Although Penn State went out of their way to minimize Marvin and whether they bracketed him or whatever they did, it's where he's most dangerous is when our offense is extremely balanced. That means Ibuka can move the chains. Cade Stover can move the chains. Our run game can move the chains, and Marv can be Maserati Marv. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
which is naturally going to show up. And I think that balanced offense can beat the team up north. That balanced offense can beat anybody we play in the first round and potentially compete with Georgia, as we saw a balanced offense last year with CJ Stroud. The one last thing I will say, and I thought about this as well on my drive in, when it comes to that clunky aspect of the offense, which I'm sure has a lot of Buckeye fans are grateful to get the 20-12 victory over Penn State, continue to stay number 3 in the country. But I think our expectations as fans, and I'll say my expectation as a former player, is we're so used to over the last 2 years, I'll say over the last 5 years, with the quarterbacks that we've had within this offense, with Ryan Day either as head coach or play caller, we're so used to things looking smooth and easy with Fields and with Stroud and with Haskins. And before that, it was JT Barrett, and it was 4 touchdowns and 400 yards almost every week. And you walk out and you leave at the end of the third quarter because it really wasn't even entertaining anymore. But that's not us right now. Kyle McCord is winning football games. He is continuing to grow, continuing to get better each and every week. I think the coaches and Kyle and we as a fan base are continuing to learn about him as a player, on what his capabilities are. And I think it's because it doesn't look like what it looked like with Stroud or with Justin Fields. We're a little again, I have that clunky feeling about it, but when it's good, which I think it's coming. And I think we've got 4 more opportunities before we play that team up north, up there in the butthole or whatever the hell it's called. You know what I mean? We need to continue
BH. It's BH stands for big house, not butthole. But go ahead.
Okay, sorry. You're right. Yeah, way to pick up on that. But I just think Kyle McCord, it seems pedestrian, what Kyle's doing, but he's winning football games. He's managing the games. And I think that it's still a work in progress.
Here's my analogy. He kind of reminds me of a pitcher who starts off either throwing strikes or doesn't, but then finds it, finds the strike zone. Or
mid-inning.
Yeah, he starts off throwing strikes and then he loses it in a couple of mid-innings, but you stay with him because he's probably going to find it. That's kind of what because Saturday, man, there were 4 or 5 throws there in the first half that were, if they had been a little more on point, Ohio State, not that they were necessarily blown out Penn State, but they would have gotten a couple more scores possibly. And you kind of go, but when you need a clutch throw, he hits Marvin Harrison Jr. on the run, on the go, on those mesh routes.
And let me say this, Tim. This is my last little shtick when it comes to Kyle McCord. If everything that Ryan Day has been criticized for is not being tough, and we're being a little too pretty and a little too flashy, and so to go back to Ryan Day's I don't know what do you call it, tirade after the Notre Dame game, right, about Ohio versus the world, and this is a tough group and all these other things. Maybe it's okay for Kyle to be this clunkier, not so clean and sexy, super 5-star, in the passing game, and really embracing, like, this team is firing right now between the offense and defense, and they're winning games. It's not what we as Buckeye fans have gotten so used to in the past. But maybe he's embracing his head coach and being, that type of game. We'd all love it to be clean. We'd all love it to be super sexy, and the 400 yards and 4 touchdowns. But it's not. And I don't see that happening. You can't just turn a page and have that happen tomorrow against Wisconsin, especially up there in Camp Randall.
Yeah.
But let's embrace the growth, embrace the fact that there's no blemishes on our schedule. And that if we continue to stay hungry and play with the toughness that we've seen exuded, it just chip away, and we enter, that game, the rivalry, exactly where we need to be.
Yeah, as I pointed out in the video earlier this week, this is a team that's getting better every week in some form or fashion. You can see it. One quickie before you go, Matt. You know how much I love having you on here, man. 4th and 2 at the goal, near the goal line. Ohio State elects to go for it. Just got stuffed on 3rd down. 3rd and 1. One guy missed a block on that play, and it was Cade Stover was a little bit late coming off the ball, whereas the offensive line got a great push, except for Cade Stover's late, and that's of course where the guy came and got Mayan Williams in the backfield. 4th and 2, wide bubble screen, whatever you want to call it, wide screen to the right. I'm not a fan. Number one, I'm not a fan of not taking points there, which is a field goal and stacking some points up. That's my term, stacking points in what is a close football game. Every point matters, just like at Notre Dame. I wasn't a fan of that. But then to throw that wide screen, which in essence is a running play, right?
Yes.
And then that Penn State, any great defense, and I think Penn State's got a damn good defense, is really good on the run. They have speed. And the way they covered that up, and I'm not a fan of that. I'm a fan of taking points, but what do you think about coaches all around the country right now are going for it, and a lot of times really failing in those?
I'm a little conflicted in regards to, because I understand the mentality of going for it, and what that means, and going up 2 scores to a team that has basically had, no offensive success against you.
Well, actually, it would have gone up a touchdown. They would have gone up an equivalent of a touchdown. It was 10-6.
Well, scoring, but I meant going for it and scoring, right?
Yeah.
Kicking the field goal, you're up a touchdown.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So I mean, it's going up 2 scores. There's a mentality of that firm belief on your defense is good. And I think Joel Klatt mentioned this in the broadcast, is like, you go up 2 scores, you don't believe that Drew Aller and this offense, with the way that your defense is playing, can score 2 times on you without you scoring again to stay ahead.
Yeah. Good point.
But I do think there's something to be said, and it's not even so much, around the country. It's, why go lateral? Like, why are you going sideways? And I think it's maybe a clear indication that there's just not a firm belief in that offensive line to be able to get the job done, that you'd rather use space and your great playmakers and get into the football. Again, the fly sweep to Mekabuka at Notre Dame, on 4th down. And now we bubble it out there, and you rely upon, your receivers to get blocks to your point, on aggressive Penn State defenders who can run.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of it. And I think that, again, I'm sure there's, probably a little bit of hindsight from Ryan Day. There's a little bit of frustration in the fact that he can't just run the ball and go get those 2 yards the way that he probably had in past, or the way that maybe even when he was a play caller and Urban used to do in the past.
Yeah.
I don't get it. And it's frustrating, but I do think that there's something to be said about a road team going down 2 scores at that juncture in the game. That is attractive for a head coach.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, I know everything he's thinking. I'm just saying, Tim May, I would have kicked the field goal there because my defense is playing really good, whether they're coming out at the 2-yard line or they're coming out starting at the 25-yard line. It didn't make a whole lot of difference on Saturday.
Correct. And it's still
the way this defense was playing. And now I'm up a touchdown instead of up 4 points. I mean, I'm not. Believe me, I'm aggressive. My big line. You knew this when you were playing. I used to tell you, when in doubt, air it out. I mean, that's my big line. But there comes a time where you just stack points, and it came back to haunt them against Notre Dame in the fourth quarter, because you would have had a couple more field goals there, and just came back to haunt them a little bit against Penn State. Because like I said, Penn State scored at the end, and they were kicking an onside kick to try to get the ball back with 25 seconds left.
Well, the
thing can happen in college football, and they were.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah,
and I think the biggest concern is that fact that no matter what Ryan Day, when he looks down at that call sheet, he doesn't believe that there's something within the tackles, that he can do that is going to get him those 2 yards.
Well, he just tried it. Yeah, he had just tried it to play before. Yeah,
something gives him a little bit of indecision, whether it's I can't attack this way because it's either like my guy can't or their guy will, and I can't do this, and I can't. And I know those linebackers that I can't put a little chum in front of them, and they're not going to jump at the bait, so I can throw it behind them, whatever. There's something to be said about, again, it's props to the Penn State defense in that situation for, on film, scaring us out of attacking them, or our inability to attack so much so that we had to go wide.
Yeah. I'm just, I guess, real quick before we go, I just hope that didn't come off the 2-point attempt, sheet. You know what I mean? Everybody,
yeah.
Because I'm not a fan, but anyway. It is what it is.
It.
Ryan Day, I think, has done a hell of a job. You heard me facetiously ask him after the game. I was going to ask you about the toughness of this team to improve something, but I want to get you going again.
Yeah.
Dude,
and he probably would.
This is a tough football team. There's no doubt about it. Agreed?
Agreed. And I just think it's, when you look back at the, the box scores, of the Buckeye games, and for me as a defender, you look at the points that we've given up, double digits, but nothing more than 17 points all season long. And you feel with Kyle McCord, with Maserati Marv, you get a healthy Travion Henderson, you get an offensive line that's growing, you get a Mekabuka back and Cade, that we're going to be okay. I just want to see it happen, in these next 2 or 3 to get another game or 2 rolling. And then we roll into, that the butthole and have an opportunity to win that game.
Yeah. And by the way, you're used to like playing on defense with an offense that didn't exactly light up the scoreboard every week, in 2002. That was just when it came time to make a play, as you started off this whole thing with, you guys made plays. And I think this offense, this team is looking very similar. Hey, Matt Wilhelm, as usual, my man, thanks for bringing it on the Tim May Show.
My pleasure, bro. My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Until next week, ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you then.